Welcome to your daily dose of growth. Hope you guys are doing fantastic on this Monday. Hey, we're going to do a little bit something different today. I am going to respond to some questions we had that were submitted on our website. We have a place there where you can post comments, you can contact us via email, ask questions, get prayer, schedule booking engagements, all that type stuff. And you can find that on our Facebook page if you go to Has Anyone Seen Grace, facebook.com/Has Anyone Seen Grace. And our sites are there, YouTube and all that's there. So I had been getting questions concerning the topic of fasting. And so it's an interesting topic. It's a very important topic. And it has been one that, seems to be just so many questions about. So I'm going to give you some guidelines today. And again, these guidelines are not to tell you how to live, but they're for you to go and study, for you to go talk to your small group about, and for you maybe even talk to your pastor, church leaders about if you have deeper questions. So we know that in the book of Matthew, Jesus talks about fasting. And some of the first things he tells us concerning fasting is to not do it the way the Pharisees do it. That it's not something that you announce, hey, I'm going on a fast. It's something that you're going to do in private. You're going to keep it to yourself. It's between you and God, and no one needs to know that it's happening in your life. If you're announcing that, hey, I'm going to fast this week, join me, it's really just not, there's nothing good that comes out of it. You just need to do those type things in secret, and God will bless you openly for those things. So number one, that's the number one thing I want to tell you, that fasting is a private thing. Now, you may attend a church where the pastor may call a fast completely different, where the church is fasting, but it's not something you're putting on social media saying, oh, I'm fasting this week, it's so difficult, and you're posting about it and letting everybody know. That is just, no bueno. So fasting is a very private thing between you and God. Number two, fasting does not convince God to do anything. Fasting is not something where you think, well, if I fast, then God will look at me and say, oh, look what a wonderful child I have. I'm going to bless them more. That's not how fasting works either. Fasting is not trying to convince God to do something. You can read Isaiah 58, and you'll see this exact scenario play out in the Old Testament, where the children of Israel are mad at God, and they're talking about, did we not fast? Have we not afflicted our souls? Did we not do all this prayer and such? And yet you've done nothing. And then God goes on to explain to the prophet Isaiah the different principles of fasting, and the four things that fasting is for, and then the ways that fasting affects your life. And I encourage you to go and read Isaiah 58 for yourself, so that you can read what is happening here and understand the purpose of fasting is not to try to convince God. The purpose of fasting is so that we may decrease, that we may get ourselves into a position where we can hear God more clearly, where we exhibit the last of the fruits of the Spirit, self-control. We take our body under control, and we tell our body, you're not the master of me. Because I don't know if you know this or not, you are not your body. This body houses your spirit, which is who you are. And so most of the time in this life, we let our bodies master us, and we let it be in the driver's seat, and that's where we end up in sin. But if we will begin to take and bring this body into subjection, and we'll begin to, Apostle Paul talks about Romans 11, Romans 12, about presenting our body as a living sacrifice to God, because it's our reasonable service. This is one of the ways that we present our bodies that way, is by fasting, so that we may allow ourselves to be renewed through this process, clearer thinking. We have much better prayer life, because we're shutting things out. We're doing things that physically benefit us. But as we replace that physical food with spiritual food, like prayer and reading the Bible, there's things that happen that allow us to hear God more clearly, and it is just such a beneficial thing. So I would, again, go to Isaiah 58 and read what's happening there. You can go to Matthew 6 and 7 and read what Jesus is saying concerning fasting as well. The other thing I want to tell you is that, when Jesus was questioned about fasting, he was questioned about it because John the Baptist and his disciples, they were fasting. The Pharisees were fasting, but of course the disciples of Jesus, they weren't fasting at the time because Jesus was with them. And once Jesus was crucified, once he was resurrected and ascended to the Father, the disciples continued to fast. They began to fast, rather. And so this is how a Jewish fast went during the book of Acts. And I find this is very beneficial for someone that's interested in being a disciple and not just a church-going Christian. The average disciple in that day fasted 2 days a week. It was part of their life. It was part of their regimen. They fasted twice a week. And the Pharisees, they had that same setup. They fasted on maybe a Monday and a Wednesday every week, and they wouldn't eat, or they did a dry fast. They didn't eat or they didn't drink anything. But they wanted people to know. The Pharisees wanted people to know, oh Lord, this is so hard. I'm suffering for God. But the way that the disciples then did it is they also did a fast for 2 days a week, but they obviously did it in private. And they did it on different days of the week than the Pharisees because they did not want to be, confused as, doing exactly what the Pharisees did. So if you decide to fast, if you feel like God is calling you to fast and you're going deeper in your relationship, then there is this beautiful thing where you can do a 2-day fast. And it's not the same days back to back. So let's say that you decide to fast on a Tuesday. Tuesday, I'm not going to eat anything. I am just going to be on a water fast. So Monday night, after your last meal, let's say your last meal is 6 o'clock, that's when your fast would begin. So on Monday night at 6 o'clock, you would stop eating anything else. And then you would just drink water or black coffee. You don't want any kind of sugars. You don't want any of that stuff. So just water and black coffee. And during the next 24 hours, so from 6 o'clock Monday night to 6 o'clock Tuesday night, you're going to try to do your best to pray as much as possible, read the Word as much as possible, and be in that state of meditation and reflection throughout that day. Now, I'm going to give you a trick. When I've done some longer fasts for different things, I come across this trick that if you kind of get a headache, and you will get headaches if you do longer fasts, and you get kind of weak, I'm going to give you a fast hack right here. This is going to sound weird saying that, but you can take a banana, and you can put a banana. I have a teacup that has a strainer in it, and I take a banana and I put it in my strainer, put that in the cup, and pour boiling water over it and let it set for about 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, I take the strainer out and I have clear water left. But in that clear water that now tastes like banana, I get magnesium and potassium and some of the vitamins from the peeling of the banana that help kind of keep my strength up and keep me like my mood stabilized in certain ways. So if you have a problem with, as you're getting started in fasting, when it becomes more of an actual practice, you may not have those same issues. But banana water, I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference. You don't eat the banana. You just take the actual the water and the magnesium and things from the banana, and it actually makes a difference. So, but again, that's just a little side note. If you're going to fast, it might be helpful for you. So the last point I want to make about fasting is this. The idea and the practice of fasting is nothing by mouth, no food. And the Jews of that day would do a dry fast. They would not eat or they would not drink. So the day before, they would be hydrated, but come 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock, they didn't drink anything, they didn't eat anything. In our modern day, I have heard of churches that are fasting Facebook, social media, they're fasting their favorite TV shows. They're doing those type things. They're giving things up. And I know that there's a process in the Catholic tradition of Lent where you give things up for Lent. I'm not talking about Lent. I'm talking about a process of fasting where we're changing things inside of us. If you are trying to say, I'm going to give up Facebook, I'm going to give up my favorite TV show, I'm not going to eat my favorite candy or whatever, and that's my fast, you're not really participating in a fast. All right? When we talk about afflicting our bodies so that we may change our physiology and change the way we look at things, we are literally talking about getting into a place where we're not eating, And we're having this time just between us and God where the Word of God becomes our food, the Word of God becomes our nourishment, and we open our hearts up to God and we go deeper in the things of God. Just like that, our 10 minutes are up. So we will try to continue. If you got to have any more questions, again, you can drop your questions. We'll do our best to answer those. You can go to our website, Has Anyone Seen Grace, and you can drop your things there. We also have blogs and videos there for some of your common questions as well. You guys have a great day, and we will talk again very, very soon.